18th century, in the 1700s, where Immanuel Kant, this great German philosopher, forms a philosophy called the Enlightenment, where he says the goal of society is to become more civilized based on the tools of reason and rationality, and eschewing the dogma of our religious past, right? So we want to think about liberty and freedom and stuff like that. At the end of the day, the European Enlightenment is directly responsible for the American and the French revolutions. And this square, the Forum Fredericanum, is built basically to reflect the flip side of what Prussia is, right? When I say that word Prussia, most people think, I don't know, pointy hats and silly walks and impressive facial hair, or propensity to invade Poland. This gentleman is the person that you need to talk to if you need to go up to the bar at the top.
Anytime you wake up.
Right? So the bar at the top here is my favorite wine bar in the city. You got to talk to him to get into the elevator. You'll see what I mean when we walk into the middle of the square. So, Frederick builds this thing to really kind of juxtapose the vision of Prussia, which is invading Poland and, right, all of these things, right? Voltaire will say some countries have an army, but in Prussia the army has a country, right? That's kind of interesting. But here, the flip side of this is all of those things that make Prussia civilized. First of all, a university, right? Prussians educate their school children, right? Soldiers of the Prussian army must be able to read and write, is what Frederick says. So the logical extension of that is viewing education as an investment in our future. So we educate our young here, and there's no cost attached to that tuition course, right? Anywhere in Germany. So civilized people also need access to information, so he builds a library right here, right? Civilized people also expose themselves to things that are beautiful. So there's an opera house here, the first opera house in Northern Europe built for the people, right? Moving it outside of the palace. Then this library becomes the law faculty of the university. So Prussia's a state based on the rule of law, right? There's a corpus of jurisprudence here that tells us how we behave and what the punishment there is for stepping out of line. So there's no torture in Prussia. It's uncivilized, right? There's this, the Hotel de Rome was a bank before. You can't have any of this without any money, right? And if we were just skirting through here, I wouldn't even say the following bit of information. There is a reason that the Renaissance starts in Florence and in Venice, right? Movements of art and culture and society, and not in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, right? Venice and Florence have massive amounts of disposable income because they're cities based on trade, right? So that's where the Renaissance of Greek culture is going to start, is in a place where you've got tons of disposable income. So you can't have any of this without any money. Then there's this, the Pantheon. At the end of what we call the French and Indian Wars, which are the 7 Years' War, right? Tons of Catholic Silesians start floating into Berlin, and Silesians are captured at the end from Austria as the Prussians take this province from them. So the rule book at the time would be, hey, you Catholic Silesians have to become Protestant because that's what we are. But instead of that, Frederick lays down the law. Remember, no country ever prospered from persecuting its Jews. At roughly the same time, he says, you have a right to worship the way that you want in Prussia. So Frederick builds the first Catholic church in Prussia since the Reformation, purposefully built on this main square to talk about what we are here. So, right, some countries have an army. In Prussia, the army has a country. Juxtapose that with a state based on education, the rule of law, access to information, freedom of the arts, a little bit of money, and a system of religious and social tolerance that for the 18th century is incredibly progressive, right? That's the other side of the coin then, right? So you will put 9% of the population in uniform, right? There's that. So when the Nazis come to power, you can imagine that they've got stuff to say about all of these things. They come to power in 1933. They don't grasp power, they don't take over, right? It's a backroom deal made to control communists and social democrats. But the Nazis go totally off the reservation the next day, right? The SA becomes part of the police on the 15th of February. The 27th of February, the Reichstag catches fire. The Nazis use that as an excuse to crack down. Then 100 days into their reign, they're going to do something on this square that puts it all into perspective, right? And that perspective is you will do what you are told, right? You will not seek out any information that's not approved by the state, because right here on the 10th of May 1933, the Nazis set fire to 20,000 banned books. They literally turned thought into smoke right here. And the underlying idea, which is basically where we're headed to here in a minute, is that if you don't play ball, if you don't do what you're told, if you don't accept this constellation of power, people can easily be turned into smoke at the same time, right? So basically on the 11th of May, the Nazis get everything that they want out of this, because everybody involved in culture that's going to raise their hands and say, no, this isn't who we are have gone. And we're talking about people that you don't know: Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht, Thomas Mann. But then there's people that you do know: Albert Einstein, Marlene Dietrich, Billy Wilder. All leave, right? So the Nazis get this clear cultural playing field, and they'll do whatever they want right here.
Arendt, there's a street for her.
Right, so Hannah Arendt, she'll come up a little bit later at the Holocaust Memorial, as we figure out that Adolf Eichmann played her a little bit. But at the end of the day, the Nazis do, in fact, get everything that they want, right? And it's 100 days in. And I used to say, hey, look at this democracy. Look at how coordinated and powerful the Nazis are for destroying a liberal democracy in 100 days. The reality now is that I'm a super cynic, and I will say, look at how powerful that democracy really was, that the Nazis could destroy it in 100 days, right? So fairly weak, as it turns out. So what's here is a memorial. And the memorial is designed by the Israeli artist Michal Ullman, and it is surrounded by a quote from Heinrich Heine that I hate, right? I hate the quote, right? Heine is a German Jew who converts to Christianity in 1823. Most Germans think of him as German and not as Jewish, right? Because these things don't matter. Heine is a great poet. He writes a poem called The Lorelei, but the play that we're referencing here is called Al-Mansur. It's a beef with the Spanish Inquisition, more or less. And at the end of Al-Mansur, the main character turns to the crowd and says, burning books is just a prelude. Only there where you burn books, you end up burning people. Now that's really interesting, and the reason that I hate it is because everybody that stands on this square hears this quote. So 1,000 times a day, right? And it's lost all of its power. If it were me, I like Voltaire. Voltaire would say something a little bit more dastardly here. He would say the people that can convince you to believe absurdities will eventually force you to commit atrocities. And that makes a lot of sense here. The absurdity of the book burning is that the information in these books is a cancer, a virus on the soul of the Germans that needs to be purged by fire, because this information has prevented us from achieving the level of greatness that we deserve, right? We are being held back by social democrats and Jews and communists and all of these people who are preventing us from achieving the goal of an Aryan society, which is true greatness. So, the atrocity that comes after that is not only do these books have to burn, but the people that write these books have to die. And that death is righteous because they'll still keep making these thoughts, they'll still keep doing these things. And if we don't take care of them, we will not move forward, right? They are holding us back, and their death is righteous. So, Michal Ullman creates this wonderful memorial here.